major blessing we all have is to be able to have something that's all our own. And I've found that my art and making art and creating and building and designing and everything in that realm of coming from within you into making something into the world, painting is like our best friend. It's something that will never leave you and no one can take away from you. And so through life and its ups and downs, we're lucky enough to have something that we can always go to, no matter where your life is at. So I paint because it kind of keeps me a nice person and a sane person, and really it keeps me moving forward when life can be limiting or put you in different situations of limbo or holding you back. Your artwork is always taking you one step forward every day. So we go back to that for kind of our refuge.
And that it is incredibly grounding to find your own personal voice and to see things in a certain way that maybe other people don't see, and so then to be able to share that. So it's kind of twofold. I think it's very grounding and nurturing, and then it's a way to share the way you see, which you kind of learn over time. And as you develop your art and your voice, I just feel like all of us here have something really wonderful to say and share. And so that's part of why I paint.
Since second grade, I wanted to be an artist and somehow managed to keep on track. And it was something I could do, being a very shy kid, I could do it by myself. And I still do it by myself mostly, like pretty much all of us do, I think. But it's almost like an inexpensive psychological therapy when you're actually in working, and no matter if you're outside or inside, your brain switches over to the intuitive part, and it's a quiet release for letting the world go and just being you and your work. And as Amy Ringholz said, it's yours, and it should be part of you to be viable to the public.
I think my answer is very similar to Kathy's. It was one of the things starting out that I felt like it was one of the only things I was any good at as a kid, and so I wanted to be of value. And then I just stuck with it, and I think it becomes something that you go back to because it's very much home. And as you get older, it changes, of course, and now I think the reason I paint is more, it's like a wild animal, and you never know what it's going to give you. You never know where it's going to go. Do you want to control it, or do you not want to control it? So it becomes like a great chess game that you're messing with this animal all the time. And I think that's what keeps me with it, is I like not knowing where it's going.
In my short answer to this question, which touches on what all of you said, is that we can't not paint. That's really what we're here to do. That became really clear to me early on. So I absolutely feel like art chose me, and maybe you would agree. If I didn't paint, I don't know what I would do. It's what I'm here to do. And I feel like I really believe that artists are in the service industry. And I really believe that we need to answer this call that we have been given to contribute to art, because art's what makes us human. And the viewer plays a different role, but we need to play our role to have there be art in the world and contribute to that.
I think for me, how I try to get them to come alive is I think my strongest suit, from my standpoint, is the pencil. Let the pencil do the work. And I don't always rely on reference material, so I really have to trust every little line and curve, and I let the pencil do it, and then I let the line come alive. And And I think it's like lifelines. We all have these lifelines that run through us and our veins and our every line we have. And I try to let that be the animal, and then the paint just follows that. So that's my best answer. It's like,
Oh, yeah. Most of my work is from personal experience of seeing what I'm painting at some point in my life. Some of it's from a long time ago that sort of has a life of its own for years sometimes before it comes out in a piece of work. And then history does mean something to me, like I've sort of been on a bison kick lately, and I've been reading books that were written a long time ago before, well, in the days, like personal experiences, in the days of when there was millions of bison on the western plains. So I'm reading these accounts of these buffalo bison and how they interacted with people. And so that informs me in whatever I paint when I read the history of the animal. And so I incorporate that. Like I said, a lot of these paintings take years to come out and come through my hands to the paintbrush.
That's a great question, and I think it's similar to Kathy, that like observing wildlife and horses, you get a feel for just certain gestures that animals have, like the certain way that horses move, or bears, or otters, or just any wildlife or equine subjects. And I think you just get a feel for their gestures and their movements, and then it's capturing that essence. And that's one of the reasons I paint fairly minimally, is I try to just focus on a head gesture or a tail swing, and I'll often combine a lot of those different things to just try to get across a gesture. So I think it's in observing those animals a lot as a kid, and then as an adult, those animals, you kind of just get a feel for when you see an essence of what they do frequently, and that's to try to capture that and then portray that in whatever medium you're working with.
I grew up in Ohio, so I was nowhere near wildlife. But what I did do is I painted a lot of portraits, a lot of drawings of people. And what I loved about contemporary wildlife was that all of a sudden you were up close and personal with a wild animal, a wild creature that you shouldn't be up close and personal with. So I really found myself taking that time with people, portraits, emotions, characters, and personalities, and then I placed it right into the excitement of being up close and personal with a moose. And so I find that, people come all this way to come to Jackson to have these kind of close encounters with magnificent creatures, and that's what I try to capture that experience in the paintings of making kind of this unforgettable character that you'll never forget seeing up close into a piece of art.
Well, I think we'd all agree that this is an unprecedented place to live if you like animals. And animals are my favorite people, so that's easy for me to dwell there. I also started out, my father was a zoologist. So we always had wild animals that he was rehabilitating in our home. And I think that instilled a deep love from the get-go. But he's also a conservationist. And I think that there's a role that art can play in conservation, in just helping people to stop and look a little more carefully at the magnificence of wildlife. And that's why I value this museum so much. I think this museum is very important because of the role that it plays in helping the visitor have a deeper emotional connection with wildlife, because that's what art does.
Well, we were asked by the director individually 2 years in advance, over 2 years in advance of the actual show. So we had plenty of time to prepare, but he threw out a few ideas for the title of our show, and we worked it out among ourselves, and he was happy with the Jackson Hole 5 Important Painters of the West. We kind of gelled because we had some meetings together so that we weren't all asking the same person at the Booth Museum of Western Art the same question. So we would get together occasionally, and it was a great opportunity personally for me to get to know my cohorts better. So that worked out good. But the museum, the Booth Western Art Museum is extremely professional. It's a beautiful building, although we were 5 days short of our meet and greet when they closed the show, the whole museum. So there was some disappointment there, but they did do some online things for us, and they brought it to the world as good as a professional museum could.
I have so much admiration for Amy's drawing ability, and she definitely draws from the heart, which is why her work is so recognizable. It really inspires me, the boldness of her line.
Thank you.
Absolutely, always has. September has a real gift for composition, and that has inspired me from the very beginning. I told you that Kathy took me out for when I was just a high school kid. She took me out on location. She not only did that, she gave me some really classic drawing books and has been a mentor since the beginning. Amy Lay, I feel like you paint from deep within yourself, and that your paintings are an expression of what you don't maybe have words for. And so in that way, I just sink right into your pieces.
Thank you. Amy, I'll start over here. My gosh, known you the longest, and I think your work reflects bravery with everything. Every pencil line and brush stroke is absolute boldness and bravery with kindness and beauty. September, I love your contrast. It's bold and powerful, and it's almost an edgy thing. You're just the contrast of light and dark. And Kathy, I think you validate our humanness and our sense of place and history in your work, and it's so important that we do that. And Kathryn, you have a sultry softness to your work that is only you, and I adore it.
I'm going to attach one word to everybody.
Oh, nice.
That's a good way to go.
So Kathryn Turner is sensitive, and of course these are interchangeable, but the thing that sticks out to me about everyone's work is Kathryn has a very sensitive way of approaching, and Amy Lay is extremely creative in her vision of the storytelling in her work. September is a consummate minimalist. The less is more is right up front with September. And Amy Ringholz is so bold and creative in her titling and her melding of different species in each work. That was almost one word per.
What I find fascinating is how our art is so much a part of our personalities. Like everyone's art it's expression of who we are. And so I would say Amy is incredibly creative and bold and like kind and loving, and all that comes out in her artwork. So that's inspiring. All these women are incredibly inspiring to me. And Kathy Wipfler, your work is technically just spot on, and there's such a sense of place and history in your work, and light, some beautiful sense of light. And then Amy, I think you all said so well, and I find that we're saying similar things, which is really interesting. I feel like Amy's work is very much from the heart, and it's just super creative, and it just comes out, and it has just all these layers, and you just really never know what you're going to see. There's just so much creativity there. And then Turner, if I can call you Turner, your work is so rich and romantic, and you just love paint, and all that, like how you work with paint is just incredible. So it's so expressive, and almost like it's you blend like romance, like it's romantic, but it's also contemporary. So it's just there's that constant play. But I mean, these ladies you guys all inspire me.
Ditto.
I think I'll just talk about what inspiration I get from each artist. I think from Turner, I get this, without saying much with the brush sometimes, you can say so much. And just recently, I think you just did some Indian paintbrush. And it was very simple. It was very powerful for something that's painted often. And so, my dad taught me keep things fresh, keep things simple, and keep painting. But I think that gesture in that life in the work is what we're all trying to keep. For Amy's, it's this looseness and this freedom and this kind of like release, and for wanting to have control over your work so much and fighting that to let go of it. Kind of reminds me of her hair. It's just like, there's freedom within that piece and space and air and thought and a place for you to go. And that's hard to do. Wipfler, I would say one thing that struck me, she did the same scene in 4 different seasons. So to study and to see the slight differences in the same subject, it takes an actual presence of being there with it. So in her work, you feel like, I am there. She is there. She's experiencing that sun, the bugs, the heat, the sunburn. And just the slight changes of the day, but actually being there when you're making the piece is different than not. So it's a sense of place. And with September, I see these completely bold, in the minimalistic way she sees things and thinks, but these bold compositions that shouldn't work, that she makes work. So in her kind of tight way of working, there is a big risk take in how you lay out your work. So it's this beautiful fight of those two very different qualities.
One was standing behind Bill Kerr when I first moved here, and at Hungry Jack's, and he said he was working on he called it his little gallery, and unbeknownst to me, it was actually this incredible museum. So, and I got to know Bill a little bit later, but that was kind of funny in retrospect. But walking in, just the design of the building alone, where you come up into the entryway and the lobby drops below you, and just the expansiveness of the building alone. And then I think specifically going to see the Ringholz paintings and just seeing so many amazing paintings in one place, that just really affected my painting career and it inspired me to, was one of the things that inspired me to start painting, was his incredible brushwork, and just being able to see them up close and in person is completely different than I've ever seen, and so it just inspired me to start painting.
So this place meant a lot to me too, and I love how it's such a community of artists. Those of us who paint wildlife, it's our clubhouse, you know. It's where we get inspired. It's where we get to work together. But I told you that I visited here when I was in high school. So we had an assignment, and the assignment was to do a sketch of some work in the gallery or in the museum. So I chose the sculpture of a mountain, this Sherry Solari Saunders, the mountain goats on a rock. And so I sketched that, and then we went back to our art class, and we were supposed to do a watercolor of that drawing that we did. So I did a watercolor. Well, it turns out that Bill Kerr bought it for $50, and he put it in the permanent collection. And that sent such a strong message to this little high school kid. It set me on my way. Another great and amazing memory was that I got to meet Bob Kuhn here. And what what a thrill that is for a young, aspiring and very hungry artist for information. So I just walked right up to him and I said, what advice would you give to an aspiring wildlife artist? And he said to me, he said, learn how to see. Learn how to see more critically. And not only is that really great advice, but the more presence that we can bring to a sense of observation, it makes art richer, but it makes life richer. So, thanks, Baku.
So I would say my most exciting moment at the museum was about 3 years ago during Western Visions. And I had a painting of 3 black bear cubs and their mother was sort of hidden back below and behind them in the shadows. And when the couple's name was pulled out of the box, they were so excited. And they were people from North or South Carolina, I can't remember which. And someone introduced us. And they were so happy because they had come here expressly to see bears and they didn't see any, other than they drove up right after one disappeared into the trees. And so this was their experience of having that moment of seeing a bear, was to be able to be chosen to buy that painting. It was really fun for me.
In 2014 or 16, Amy and I collaborated and made this giant show and got to put it up in the, kind of in the lobby. And it was called Rise of the Phoenix. And it was just such a wonderful, crazy, magical, crazy, wonderful thing. And it's just, I've only had when you look back at your life, it's 10 amazing days out of the whole, all these years, and those days are one of them. So there's a very special attachment that I got to build something within this amazing space of a celebration of wildlife, and then bringing the phoenix into it, which is rising from the ashes, and how many times we go through that in life. And that was just an incredible experience. But my other one that I want to mention is that I came here for a job interview when I was 24 to be a real estate agent, web designer in Jackson Hole. And on the way to the airport, when they took me back to the airport from the interview, we stopped here. And, I was like, wow, this is it. And then I saw Donna Halsickle's painting where there's a female walking next to a bear. And it's one of the pieces in the collection. And I was like, this is me. This is who I am. This is the family of painters I belong in. This is what I'm going to be, what I'm going to do, who I am, what I'm going to work for. And everything kind of found its home here. And so it was a huge turning point in my life when I saw that piece in this building.
For me, I guess there's so many great memories here. It was just a dream come true to even be part of the museum in any way. The first time I came to Jackson, I was an aspiring artist. I had 3 little kids in the back seat in car seats, and I was a little frazzled, and I got to Jackson and I just wanted to drive around and kind of see the country, because I knew Yellowstone was close and I'd never been to Yellowstone, and I was by myself, and life wasn't easy. And I ended up across the valley from the museum on a hill, on a gravel road. I don't to this day know where that was, but I got out and I got the kids out and I'm holding them, and I looked across and I could see the museum, and it blends in, and I just had this moment, and it was evening, and I remember thinking someday I want to be part of that, and then it happened, and I just never want to forget that moment, and be grateful for all of that. Now my kids are older and they're adults, and I have a daughter who is an artist, and this place has meant a lot to me.
Being an artist, there's a lot of highs and lows too. Working up towards a show is exhausting. and awesome and difficult. And putting a whole body of work together, there's so much mental energy and emotional energy that goes into that. And then there's something called like the post-show blues, because you kind of reach a peak and then it's just automatic that there's always a little bit of a downer, depression-y type feeling time when it's over. So I think as artists it's important to keep looking at what's next. And even if it's years down the road, it'll take that long to get there. So personally, what's next? First of all, I just like the question. But I have been working on a children's book about how the jackalope got his antlers. And so I'm enjoying the writing, the rhyming, and then the illustration and the storytelling and putting these pieces together, so that I'd like to put this entire body of work together as a show, and that's just down the road. So that's my next.
For me, my history reading has become more important in my imagery. In the West, we have a lot of public and open places, and I can get a diary, or like I took the book of Thomas Moran's drawings of Green River, Wyoming when I went down there to do my studies for my Green River, Wyoming paintings. And I could hold that book and I could take a few steps over to the left, and I was sure I was in his footsteps. And that became part of the title of that painting. So I look forward to reading more history and being able to be in the locations where these things actually happen, which is pretty easy to do in this open country in the West. And in my paint application, I would like to say more with less. Not easy to do.
Love hearing about what's next with all of you. Good luck. Well, I will be presenting an exhibition during Fall Arts Festival at Turner Fine Art Gallery, so please come see what I've been working on. For the last year, a lot of the pieces have more color in it than I can tend to put, and I think that it was influenced by my trip to India this past fall. After that, I'm super excited because I have this opportunity to do an artist in residency at the Brinton Museum in the Bighorn Mountains. So I'll be on sabbatical there for the month of October. And I bet you all agree, like, it's just so difficult to protect painting time. So I'm super excited to just kind of go off the grid and do a deep dive into, and just life will be simpler and nobody will know where I'm hiding. Just paint. So I'm excited about that. That will lead up to an exhibition that I have there in 2 years from now.
Well, I was laughing because everyone was talking about how minimal I am, and I'm thinking about what's next is becoming more minimalism, and I'm like just gonna be staring at a white canvas. Maybe that's what's next.
You could call it artist rendition of Jackson Hole in the winter.
In the winter, yeah. So, I have been playing with paintings that are more, they're not completely painted. They're, because I paint, I lay out my paintings with oil, like there's an oil underpainting that's more of it like a drawing. So I've been playing with a combination of, it's just a lightness of that drawing and then painting in where it feels like the composition is asking for it or the expression is asking for it. So that's, I haven't done a few of those, but that's kind of a little bit of a direction. At the same time, I just feel like I'm really learning how to become a better painter, just constantly not chasing, but educating yourself, playing with different techniques and being inspired, and it's just endless. So I just feel like I'm just playing with this other direction, but just still really diving into paint. So
I just hope all kinds of stuff. I think I've always been someone, I think Amy told me one time, she goes, you don't have 5 balls in the air, you have like 25. And I think that's so true. And so for me, painting is just one part of such a big bunch of things I'm always doing. So I'm hoping just to go back to the wild animal analogy. I just hope I just get to keep playing with this wild animal and let it just still be wild and let my painting go where it needs to go. And maybe grow some vines and have a vineyard and raise a family still and do all those other things at the same time and be able to share it now I think I need to become someone who speaks a little more and shares it back to the world in other ways as well. So I'm hoping I can find a way to do that.
Be sure on our behalf to thank everybody for watching.
Yeah.